Today is Father's Day, aka Dad's Grill for Your Family's Day. Therefore, dads, hand in the air, we have a gift for you because we recognize this is what it looks like for you on Father's Day. We have a gift for you, and it's coming in. You want this? Dad's hand in the air. I know you're a dad. Come on. Hand in the air. Everybody that's a dad in here needs themselves. I feel like somebody's making a public announcement right now. I don't even know. I'd like to say Elliot Nallison. Elliot has his hand raised right here. All right, we need it right here. This guy, it's en route. One in the oven right here. We're claiming Father's Day. I love it. Elliot Nallison, if anybody didn't pick that up. So, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. All right, so go grill for your families, Dad. It's very important that you do that today. Bill, did you get one? All right, everybody got one. Awesome. Yeah, put one for me. My stuff's under the stage. Yeah, okay. Back table, I get one too. That's good. Hey, just because I'm your dad doesn't mean you get my stuff. All right. Awesome. Guys, if you didn't notice, there's a lot of extra folks here today from FBC Carrollton. We're so happy to have them. They're here doing some work with us, serving our community this week. So let's give FBC Carrollton a big hand. Man, our 2.5 hour setup took like 37 minutes today. It was awesome. Like, they're just all over. It's so good. So we were in a series called Don't Throw Stones. It comes from a passage a lot of us are familiar with in John chapter 8, where a woman was accused of adultery, and all these guys came to accuse her, and Jesus said, okay, cool, whoever's without sin, throw the first stone. And we looked at that 2 weeks ago, and then we started this little series where all the staff was going to come up here and be interviewed by a leader in our church and tell our story. And talk about the reason why we feel very passionate in our church, like, don't throw stones. Like, we are not better than anyone. And so that's what we're telling the story. So I want to invite Bill up here. He's going to interview me. I've known Bill for a long, long time. Let's give Bill a round of applause. So I'm excited to hear what he has to ask me. It will be fun. I'm sure of it. He's good friends with my dad. So maybe, I don't know if they colluded to make some different questions, ask about my childhood and what actually happened that day. I don't know.
No, nothing like that. Nothing so much fun. It's funny, when we were talking amongst the guys on who was going to interview who, and I was like, I'm going to interview Peter. Of course. Why? Because I'm going to interview Peter.
Yeah.
Because I've known him for a long time, and I know his dad, and it's Father's Day, and all this other stuff, and I got stories to tell. So I got to keep the stories to a minimum, because we're going to run out of time. But I did want to share one thing with you. When I was thinking about how to do this and how to introduce this guy, I was thinking, why is it that I felt so compelled to be the guy that interviews Peter? And I was thinking about it, because I want all of you to know Peter like I do. That's what I want. So that's why I want to do this interview, because I know, how many years has it been? I was trying to calculate.
12 to 13.
13 years, something like that in there, a long time. And I think Peter's going to elaborate on this a little bit more later, but Peter and Bill really didn't get along that well at the very beginning. Two kind of forceful type A personalities separated by, 30 years. And so you got the alpha, me, and then you've got the not quite alpha yet, you. And so there was a little tension there at some times, and he'll talk about that. But we got over all that stuff, and it's good. And living with Peter and Courtney and the kids for a few years was very cool too. Got to know them in different ways there. Drove home one time, and Julie looks up and goes, there is a dead animal hanging in that tree. I'm like, well, Peter lives here. You understand that? There are going to be dead animals hanging in trees because Peter lives here. And so anyway, it eventually came down. It was good. Just the legs were there for a while, but it's okay. Didn't process that part, apparently.
You don't eat the hooves.
Anyway, enough story. I could literally talk all day long, but we kind of ended this with, I want to be very serious. And I do want all of you to know Peter like I know Peter, because it's been a journey, and it still is. We're still far from the destination, but it's been a journey. And I thought a good way to start this kind of little conversation was to say, before there can be a new, there has to be an old, right? So why don't you start out telling us a little bit about the old Peter?
The old, okay. When Bill talked about when we first met, some of you may or may not have heard, this is a joke, because I know y'all have heard a lot here at church. I used to play in a rock band, and we used to travel around and do that stuff. And so when I first met Bill, I was like 3 months removed of 6 straight years of every weekend being in some form of bar or music venue playing music. And so Bill was an ex-sound guy from a previous generation, and I was freshly into the music scene, and he was helping with the church sound stuff. And I might have taken the approach of talking to sound guys at bars on 6th Street instead of like I'm now in church. And so that's where a little bit of I was kind of rough to be around when we first started. I was 22. I knew everything, which was very helpful to everybody else that didn't. So as you know, anybody that's older than 22 understands that. The older you get, the less you know. And unfortunately starting to recognize that. At 22, I had no idea. I just knew everybody else didn't know as much as I did. So that was a lot of our tension. But
I was actually very proud that I didn't get up and walk out. It was a learning moment for me as well.
Yeah,
I was like, I could do this.
We all grew. We all grew. It was very nice. So old me and new me. I was raised in a pastor's home. I was raised in a really good home, like a really good home. You know my dad and your friends, and most of y'all, I guess, don't know my parents. I know that. And I was raised in church, like back in the Southern Baptist days, where it was Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, and then like Thursday prayer meeting and like a Friday work day at the church. You know, like I was at the church a lot. So of course, at 6 years old, walked the aisle, did the things, and all that really created in me was this great like spiritual like arrogance and became a Pharisee, like for sure. My natural bent is do the rules, right? And I think I'm probably staring a lot of people that can resonate with that here, coming from a Baptist church, a bunch of middle schoolers. Like a lot of y'all been in church your whole life. You don't even know which sins Jesus died for you for because you haven't found any of the sins in you yet. Like that was me, and that went great as I was homeschooled and a preacher's kid, and I was always better than the other 4 of my siblings, and that was pretty simple, right? You know, just do good things. Then I went into public school in 8th grade, and if any of y'all know about homeschool and being a preacher's kid, both of those make you socially awkward, and then I put them together and went to public school, and so it didn't go well, and I had a really tough time. I made fun of a lot, didn't have friends, and most of it centered around my faith, but I also was very, very hard in it. It's like, you're not doing it right, you're not doing it right, you're not doing it right. I had a great disdain for my older brother for quite some time because he wasn't doing it the way we were all taught as kids, and he decided to live his own life doing his thing, and I kind of resented him for it for a long time. And so most of my Christian childhood was lived as the people that Jesus always came after in the Bible. I don't know if you know this, but Jesus loved the sinners a lot and had great disdain and anger towards religious people. Like you read the Gospels, the only people Jesus chews out are religious people. The rest of them, he's like, welcome. Like, come on, I want to show you how I want to love you. And that's who I was. And that was a hard bit to swallow when I realized that, when that realization came to me. So old me hit a real hard roadblock when school wasn't panning out with the way I thought it would, and sports weren't panning out the way I thought it would, and I decided, fine, that's it, I'm out. Forget the Christian stuff, I'm just tired of it, I'm ready to be cool. And so about sophomore year, I dove headfirst into the other side of school and life with the drinking and girls and that deal, and just kind of rejected my faith, because honestly, a faith that's built on rules doesn't take you very far. It takes you to a great heartache and just like, this isn't worth it. I don't like this. And so I ditched it, and I became cool, transferred schools to a different school, and I instantly had all the friends I wish I'd had before, and then the girls I wish I'd had before, and all those things were there now available to me. And I lived that for a number of years until I guess that all came to a head, a pretty significant life experience. My wife's in the audience. She knows all these things, so don't like anybody like, you know. We know each other. We've spoken. Yeah. So I was not a good guy. Girls became a commodity, not something special to be treasured, something to be used. And one night I was with a girl who had a boyfriend that was not me, but I was at her house that night. And at the end of that night, she's like, look, I can't do this anymore. And of course, me being super cool, I was like, whatever, cool, no big deal. And I drove away from that house, and God just overwhelmed my spirit that night, telling me, he's like, you have all this judgmental Christian, whatever, all these people are all horrible people. He's like, you're those people. You're the what you hate about humanity. And honestly, it completely overwhelmed me that night. And honestly, I was crying too bad I couldn't keep driving. I actually parked my car in the middle of the road and got out on my knees in the road and prayed and gave my life to Jesus for real. Not just rule following, but like Savior following, And it was an old country back road. There were no other cars. There was no one out there. So this wasn't like a 4-lane in the middle of the city or anything. I was raised in country towns. So it was pretty safe. But that's when the new me started being formed, I would say. And there was a trajectory was then established, not a trajectory of perfectionism or even trying to be so. It took a long time to wash off those years and to get my head and heart right when it came to how I interacted with girls, interacted with alcohol, interacted with my language. Those things did not just like heal back to perfect. No. This time I understood, unlike when I was 6, I'm like, I'm a really good kid and I'll just be a better one. No, I was like, I'm a really bad kid and I hope Jesus can help me. And it was just a different approach to faith in Christianity. So there's a 19 years or so in a nutshell.
That's a... It's
on.
Okay, there we go. Great beginning part of the story. The first 19 years. Yeah. You're what now? Like 28 now or something like that? Right. Yeah. Oh, wait, that's Will.
Yeah. Just turned 36.
36. Okay.
I'm a few weeks into 36. Got extra gray hairs.
Fill in the other 17 years. Some stuff probably happened in between there. Some big things in your life. Fill that in a little bit.
Yeah. So, like I said, I did music. I did music because a couple of reasons. I loved music. My buddy in high school, whom I taught how to play guitar, got super famous playing guitar, so I figured I should too, but it never worked out. His first album went platinum, and he toured the world as a famous rock star, and I was left behind. So I did music for a lot of years, and then at 22, my dad was going to plant a church, and I told him I did the best defense is a good offense. I just preemptive strike. I'm like, don't call me, I'm not coming. Because I knew he was going to say, the Lord has a call in your life and you need to be leading worship at my church. I was like, I know this call is coming, so I'm just going to beat him to it. Don't call him. I'm in a band. It's going to be awesome. And then the drummer, my best friend in that band, broke the band up. He may or may not be in this church. There might have been a rocky patch in our friendship. We had centered a lot of life around this band, and a lot of things were going on that he just like quit the band and ruined everything, and that's why we're not famous now. It was a tough deal. And so that's when I said yes to the Lord, to vocational ministry. God had put some things on my heart and put some things in place for it. And so I called my dad up, like, yeah, I'll do this. And so I started doing worship at the church we were planting. Then I started doing youth ministry at the church we were planting. And it kind of grew from there. So I'll tell you some significant life events that took me to who I am as a pastor today, as in a work in progress. One would be I was traveling. I was taking one of my students home. And when I took him home to his house, it was a single wide, windows were busted out. There was a couple of AC window units, and he was telling me about how the guy that owned the house was mad at his mom, so his mom had to stay in his room, and his sister had to stay in his room, and his nephew had to stay in his room. And this is a young teenage boy, and Courtney and I was like, I couldn't do anything about it. Couldn't help. Well, here's your backstory. Courtney and I were both raised pretty poor. She by a single mother. Me, my dad was a pastor that moved around a lot. My mom never worked. And so when I moved out of the house, my parents actually owed me money. And when she moved out of the house at 17, her mom, there was no help. So we were both on our own. And so what did we decide to do with that? Well, we're never going to be like that. So we worked hard. We got money. We got things. And so we had a nice house with the extra rooms we didn't even use. There's unpacked boxes in there for a couple years. And I'm seeing this kid that lives in this different situation. I'm like, I can't do anything about this because of how I've structured my life. And it hurt. And we started talking, we started praying, and sold our house. And for the next 7 years, we were in nothing bigger than 800 square foot, a couple garage apartments, one being yours, which is, as far as a garage apartment goes, it's pretty high end still. And we did that. And so we did 1 bathroom and 2 bedrooms with 4 of us for 7 years because the Lord had just spoken to us so much that day. It's like, man, you've been pursuing all those things that you didn't have, so don't be that way. don't be poor like your parents were. Make sure you have these things. And we found no life in it. We actually found despair in it whenever real life came, and we're like, and real life is people need you, they need hope, they need Jesus, car and your house, and I'm giving them anything. They're not giving you any life either. And so we've now been proud homeowners for 2 years, after it took 7 years to really make sure we got our heads and our hearts right to say, okay, we are actually going to structure our life the right way and do these things the way we should. Another big life event that's made me who I am today as far as a pastor was I have MS. Some of y'all may or may not know that. And multiple sclerosis, it's this whole bit that gives you scars on your brain and spine and stuff, and does a lot of terrible things to your body. I like to be active. I like to be physical. I like to do these things. So when I first got it, right when I met you, I think, I went downhill real fast. And I couldn't walk around hardly anymore. I had to quit. I just couldn't work. I lost all my sight in one eye. I lost all the strength on one side. I'd fall over. I had no balance, all this stuff. And I got into this investigational study and this drug. There was this new bit, and it took MS away from me and gave me a lot of things back, and I was able to function again for 5 years. Then I had a bad relapse. And we got the medicine again. It's like, it'll be another 5 years. Then 10 months later, I get hit hard. And at this point, like, this is not good. I've lost bladder control. My feet are on fire. Like, I can't function. It's a dark spot. And I'm mad at God. At this point, I got kids. Not just the adopted kids, like all the youth group kids I had, which are definitely my kids, but I had a little son finally. He's like, I'm going to teach you to play basketball and throw football. And my daughter, like, we had raced up in Shannon Rock before, like, who can make it to the top? She's 3. I won, but barely, And I'm like, and I go to the doctor, and he's like, look, walker, cane, like, that's your future. Maybe wheelchair, maybe sooner rather than later. And it crushed me. I had depression for the first time in my life, and is a side effect of MS also. And I knew I had to tell the church I was serving at. I told my dad, who was the pastor, like, I got to preach Sunday. I got to let them know what's going on. I got to give them something about God's good in this, even though I didn't feel it. And the night before, Saturday night, I get in bed with Courtney, and she's like, do you remember what you said when you first got diagnosed with MS? Like, this sucks? Like, I don't remember. She's like, no. It's like, you might have said that, but she said, what you said was, if it's going to be like this and be this bad, we shouldn't have kids because they don't need to have a dad that can't function, push around in a wheelchair. And I was like, okay, yeah, I guess it didn't hit me. The next day, as I'm preparing to speak, and I was also leading worship, I was singing this song, How He Loves. A lot of y'all know the song, How He Loves. And it hit me that God had taken away that disease to get me out of my own self-pity head long enough for me to have 2 kids. And now it's back. What am I going to say, God? No, really? You gave it to me? What? I have Kimber and Creek. How could I possibly be angry right now? Like, I wasn't even going to have kids. I have the 2 most amazing gifts. Like, how God loves us and the way He has shaped us and the way He has specifically reached into our lives long enough to take away this disease for 5 years, and now it's back full force and whatever. And I'm all like mad about it. I'm not going to be able to run with my daughter up in Shannon Rock or throw the football with my son. I was like, I have kids. Look what I've done. You have kids. I don't even care. That's needless to say, I fell apart on the stage that Sunday. It didn't go great for anybody. They just watched me cry and try to speak, and it didn't work. But I think that was a very shaping time in my life to make me not stare at the circumstances, but stare at the Savior, And look at all the different ways God has loved us specifically in all these times. And I was like, self-pity, really, God? You're going to give me all these issues now? But like, He had given me that time in my life where I didn't stare at myself so much, where I wasn't so selfish. I had kids. And, come what may, they're with me. He's with me. That's enough. I would say those are the 2 biggest things I can look back at in the last years of just.
I think you have no idea how effective that sermon was that you gave that day. It was extremely effective.
Not a lot of
It may
words.
not have been to you, but it was.
Not a lot of words came out. I remember
Yeah,
that.
didn't need it. Didn't need it. Okay, so being that it's Father's Day, what does the Bible teach us about being fathers and what fathers get from the Father to be better fathers?
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
If you've read the Bible much, I would say you know that there's not a whole lot of like, here's how to be a dad. There is fathers don't exasperate your children. Like, okay, spare the rod, spoil the child. It's like, okay, there's not
in my experience, that's impossible.
Yeah,
to do.
right,
You have-
yeah.
you're
So,
going to exasperate.
so there's not a whole lot. So something I love that I go to is Nehemiah 4:14. Are you with me, guys? I know. It's hard. It's in the back. Nehemiah 4:14. Check this out. So they're trying to rebuild Jerusalem. It's been broken down. Nehemiah's a prophet. He's come. He's rebuilding the walls. And all of a sudden, these enemies coming against him. And if you're a dad, you know it feels like, man, the world is after me and on my back. And sometimes, my family doesn't recognize the things I'm trying to hold back and hold off of them, and like the work and all the things. We feel this like weight that we can't hold. And that's what was happening to them. This is what he said. Nehemiah is talking to the troops who were AKA the builders, the farmers, all the guys. It said they had to work with like a sword on one side and then a trowel on the other side. Let's build this wall. He said, do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome, and fight for your brothers, your sons, your daughters, your wives. And so, theme, what does the Bible have for fathers? Get in the war. Fight for your family. Don't be passive when it comes to the health of your family, the protection of your family, spiritually, emotionally, physically. Stand up and fight for your family. So, fathers, I would say, the Bible also says, Jesus' New Testament, he said, go make disciples. Guys, that's your first job. It's a big part of you fighting for your family and your sons and your daughters and your wives. Go make disciples. And I love what he has at the end of that Great Commission. It says, and I'm with you always to the end of the world. And he says here in Nehemiah, he's like, when you're going to fight for your homes and your town and your families and your sons and your daughters and your wives, remember the Lord who is great and awesome. We feel insecure a lot of times, guys. Don't have what it takes. Probably true. But remember the Lord, and he'll be with you always. And in that strength, fight for your sons and your daughters and your wives. Wade in. Don't back down. The Lord is with you. Remember him. He is great and awesome and mighty. There's no other translations that had that awesome and mighty as the word is terrifying. Realize our God is the one that has like destroyed countries with words. The Lord is awesome and mighty. He's on your side. So fight. Fight like you know who's got your back.
That's pretty good. So I've always thought of it as fathering something is pretty easy, doesn't really take a lot of time. It's kind of just like happens, right?
Yeah.
Right. And it's been happening for a long time. Being a father is really hard. It's really hard. But the good thing is we've got the best example in the world. Our Father, right? Yeah. He tells us how to do it, and that's exactly what Pete's talking about. We also talked when we met to get ready for this about how much effect 2 Samuel 12 had had.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so you guys probably all know the story. God sends Nathan and literally sends him. It's very, very brief, right at the beginning. God sent Nathan. So right off the bat, it's like Nathan just didn't wake up and say, okay, I'm going to go and rebuke David. He was sent by God with a very specific purpose to rebuke David. And he does it pretty interesting and pretty compelling and convicting way. Why don't you tell us a little bit about why that's so important to you?
Yeah, the story matters a lot to me because it's my story. And in this story, I'm King David. Not the David and Goliath story, but this story, I'm King David in this one. Because David has taken advantage of Bathsheba, right? Gotten her pregnant, a married woman, sent her husband out and gotten him killed, and just done horrible injustices to humanity. And God sends Nathan to tell him a story. And that story he tells King David was, there's this guy, he had everything. All the money, all the wealth, all the riches, everything. And a visitor came and needed food. And instead of taking what he had, he went to this poor guy who had one thing. He stole his lamb and he served it. He didn't need it. This guy was selfish. And King David, he's outraged. He's like, what? This man deserves to be killed, cast out, thrown, all his family sold in slavery. It's the worst thing imaginable. And David's like, go do it. Nathan said, you're the guy. And that was just like, that's something that's hit me so many times when I started throwing stones at people. Like, what? They did what? You did that, and they thought this, and they acted that way, and you treated somebody that way. And a lot of times God shows up at night. He's like, yeah, you're the guy. Like, man, right. Like that night when I got saved, basically the Holy Spirit showed up and said, oh yeah, you want to be all fired up about how people treat other people and how humanity is the worst? You're the reason. So that's why this whole don't throw a stone thing matters so much to me, because like I've been the guy that did it all. And it's the arrogance that's involved there and the complete lack of grace. You know, Matt Chandler once said it. He's like, we all want justice for everybody, except us. I don't want justice done to me. Everybody else deserves justice for things they've done. Not me. I want grace. And I just lived that for so long. That story centers me, brings me back to that day. I realized, like, all these things I want to get upset at people for acting this way and that way and doing this and that. Like, I'm the guy.
I hear you. So we're going to wrap up here in just a second. I wanted to share one last Pete story, if you don't mind. It's a good one. Just to help you guys understand the Peter that I've known for 12 or 13 years. We were at another church, and the pastor of that church decided to leave and go back and pursue his studies. His dad decided to leave and go back to school and pursue his studies. And Pete had been the worship leader for years and awesome youth group leader, and really seen him really go a long way from that guy who told me I sucked 13 years ago, and didn't do that anymore. And I said, somebody came and asked me, can you support Peter for senior pastor? And I looked at him and said, maybe. I have no idea. He's a really good youth pastor, and he's a really good worship leader. But I have no idea if he would be a good lead pastor. So I sat down with Peter. After that, I said, I'll talk to Peter. I'll tell him. Sat down with him. I said, Peter, I really could support you for this. I could see you've got the raw material, right? But I need to see three things. I need to see your vision for the church, that church at the time, which a lot of that is woven into where we are today, right? And I need to see the vision for the church. I need to see you preach. You preached like twice, right? And the whole time we've been here, that I remember. And I said, I need to see you preach, and I need to see leadership. I need to see that you can lead a body of people. And I thought this would be like, here's a good plan for Peter to work on for the next couple of years. And like a week later, he calls me, okay, I've got the vision. Can we meet for breakfast? I'm like, yeah, we can meet for breakfast. So we met for breakfast, and he puts it out. It's like 2 pages long, and he prints it out and shows it to me, and I'm reading it. This is really good. This is really awesome. He goes, I'm going to be preaching on Sunday. Okay, let's go. And then he killed it in the preaching for like 6 or 8 months. He preached every weekend for like 6 or 8 months. Absolutely killed it, showing me everything. And at the same time, also, the leadership thing. Started stepping up on the leadership thing. We talked about it a few times, really started stepping up. And at the end of all that, they decided not to make him an offer for lead pastor. So we chose to go different directions. Peter went a different direction. As we're on our way out the door at that church, I'm like, hey, Pete, if you ever start a church, give me a call. And I think this could be really cool. And so he said, yeah, that ain't going to happen. I'm done. I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to fix it.
Green?
There we go. I'm back. All right. And so we kind of part ways, and like the next week he moves into my apartment over the house. And so we're watching me. He's going to school and all this stuff. And I keep egging him. I said, Pete, that other church and some other guys from that other church were also telling you the same thing. Guys are no longer here, but they were part of the founding of this church. And then kind of goes away and thinks about it. And then like a year and a half later, he comes up. I've got an idea. I think I'm going to launch a church. Great idea, Peter. Thank you. What? Oh, that's so awesome that you figured that out all by yourself. That's so good. But no, and that's just part of this guy. You give him a challenge, 3 things. He does them. Now he goes out and he attacks them and he does them. And he learns from his mistakes and he does what he needs to do. And so I'm just proud to be part of this thing we're doing here and proud to be your friend. I'll never be your dad, but I can step in every now and then if you need me to. Cool. Any parting thoughts you got for us?
Yeah. Dads. I had a great upbringing. I had great parents. Super genuine in their faith. Always. Behind closed doors, in front of everybody. It was always them. Always Jesus. Always consistent. They have 5 kids. Almost all of us have really bad patches of just running the other direction. I mean, there's been whatever you got in your family, the drama, you got it. I assure you. There's been lots of illegal things done. There's been lots of drugs done. There's been assaults. There's been all the things, right? Whatever you rehabs, like the whole bit. It's all tied up in the 5 of us. We've all done our things. But dads, know that it's not all on you to bring out perfect kids at 18. You fight for them, you do everything you can, and you trust God with the results. You do not beat yourself up if a child chooses something else. Scripture is clear. That's God's business. The salvation of the soul is not yours. You're tasked with raising them in a godly manner. You're not tasked with saving their souls and choosing their future. Don't beat yourself up if somebody's going the wrong direction. And watching my dad do it so well and watching all of us do some things that are not appropriate, that helps me a lot. And in the don't throw stones category of like, really, your son, your daughter, it's me, siblings. I'm a godly man and a godly woman raising. I want you to know, parents, not all in your hands. You have to trust God. You have to allow Him to have the results. So I guess my final thought is, as this series goes, next week, John, our worship guy, is going to share his story. In this church, you will never have something you do or share something you've done and us go, oh, there's the door. I'm going to say, man, I know like 10 of you, So don't want anybody to be scared to bring in who they really are and to live as who they really are. We're here, a bunch of broken people just super happy about grace. So you're welcome. You're welcome here no matter what it is. We've done it too. And Jesus has forgiveness for you.
That's awesome. Peter, thank you for being open, honest, sharing stuff that's difficult, that kind of thing. Everybody, give this guy a hand. Did a good job. I hope you guys know him a little bit more like I know him now. That's the idea.
We're gonna transition to the last worship song. I'm gonna pray for us real fast, and we'll move to worship.